We spent 43 years building a device that could read time itself, and a human reverse engineered it during lunch and uploaded it as a free app. Here's the thing about spending 43 years of your life on a single project. You start to really believe that what you've created matters, that it's special, that the rest of the galaxy will look at your work and feel the same bone-deep satisfaction that keeps you awake at night checking calculations for the 1,000th time. My name is Kel Rith, and I'm a complete idiot, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to 3 months ago, when I still had hope, when I still thought the temporal spatial analysis device would change everything for the right reasons. The Galactic Technology Summit on Vardos Prime. 17,000 delegates from 462 species, all crammed into a convention center that smelled like recycled air and expensive ambition. I stood backstage adjusting my presentation robes for the 5th time, while my research partner Velna tried not to throw up into a waste receptacle. "We've got this," I told her, which was a lie we both needed. "They're going to lose their minds." The device sat on the demonstration platform behind us, all 7 meters of it, humming with barely contained power. Crystalline matrices interwoven with quantum processors, temporal stabilizers that cost more than a small moon, energy conduits that required 3 different types of shielding just to keep them from warping local space-time. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was the culmination of 4 decades of research, countless failed prototypes, and more grant applications than I care to remember. The Temporal Spatial Analysis Device, or TSAD for those of us who'd earned the right to call it something less formal, could map objects and phenomena across 4-dimensional space. Not just where something was, but where it had been and where it would be. Imagine seeing the entire timeline of a particle's existence, all at once, rendered in perfect mathematical clarity. Imagine understanding causality itself as a visible, measurable thing. My species, the Vathrine, had produced exactly 3 innovations in the last millennium that the Galactic Council deemed revolutionary. This was going to be the 4th. I'd staked everything on it. 5 minutes, Dr. Kilrith, the stage coordinator called out, her translator rendering her clicking language into something I could understand. Velna stopped dry heaving long enough to give me a weak smile. "Remember to breathe during the technical explanation. You always forget to breathe." "I'll try to maintain basic biological functions, yes." The audience filled the auditorium beyond, a sea of different atmospheres contained in personal environmental fields. A rainbow of skin tones and body configurations that represented the absolute pinnacle of galactic civilization. Somewhere in that crowd were the board members who'd approved our funding, the peer reviewers who'd validated our mathematics, the journalists who'd been speculating about today's announcement for weeks. No pressure. I walked onto the stage to polite applause, the kind of measured response you get from scientists who refuse to show excitement until they've verified your data themselves. The holographic displays powered up around me, showing schematics and equations that had haunted my dreams for years. "Esteemed colleagues," I began, my voice only shaking slightly, "what I'm about to show you represents a fundamental shift in how we understand." The auditorium doors burst open. A human stumbled in, 20 minutes late, holding a paper cup of something that was almost certainly coffee. He wore casual clothing instead of formal attire, had visible stains on his shirt that suggested a recent and tragic breakfast incident, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that only comes from either extreme competence or complete obliviousness. His identification badge read Owen Fletcher, Earth Delegation. He found a seat in the 3rd row, took a long sip of his coffee and gave me an apologetic wave that somehow made me even more annoyed. Humans. Of course it was a human. I tried to refocus on my presentation, on the 43 years of work sitting behind me, on the moment I'd been dreaming about since I was a junior researcher with more enthusiasm than sense. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to go sideways. Spoiler alert. I was right. I powered through the interruption like the professional I pretended to be. The holographic displays shifted, showing the theoretical framework that made the TSAD possible. Equations floated in the air, beautiful and merciless, each one representing months of collaborative work. "The Temporal Spatial Analysis Device," I continued, gesturing toward the machine behind me, "operates on principles that challenge our conventional understanding of dimensional perception. What you're looking at is not simply a scanner, it's a window into the fundamental structure of reality itself." The audience leaned forward. Even the human stopped drinking his coffee, which I took as a minor miracle. Traditional 3-dimensional scanning gives us position, right? Height, width, depth. We know where something is at a specific moment in time. I manipulated the holographic controls, and a simple cube appeared in the air above the audience. But the TSAD adds the fourth dimension, time, as a spatial coordinate that can be mapped and analyzed simultaneously with the other three. The cube in the hologram began to blur, then multiply, showing dozens of iterations of itself at different temporal coordinates. Past positions, present location, future trajectories, all rendered in crystal clear detail. A Threxian delegate in the front row made a whistling sound that her species used to express profound respect. Several others activated their recording devices, which was technically against summit rules, but nobody was enforcing that particular regulation right now. The applications are virtually limitless, Velna added from her position at the control console, her voice steadier now that we were actually doing the thing. Archaeological analysis without excavation, predictive modeling for stellar phenomena, criminal investigations that can trace an object's entire history, medical diagnostics that account for temporal factors in cellular development. I nodded, warming to the subject despite my earlier nerves. The quantum processors handle approximately 900 trillion calculations per second, maintaining temporal coherence across the scanning field. The crystalline matrices grown in zero gravity over a period of 8 years provide the stable medium necessary for four-dimensional data translation, and the temporal stabilizers, well, those are what keep the whole thing from accidentally creating localized time distortions that could theoretically unmake everyone in a 3-kilometer radius, Velma said cheerfully. So pretty important. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. The kind of laughter that said, please tell me you're joking, but I'm terrified you're not. We've run 4,000 successful tests, I assured them quickly. The safety protocols are absolutely airtight. Would you like to see a live demonstration? The affirmative responses came in 17 different languages simultaneously. I took that as a yes. Velna activated the device. The hum increased in pitch and intensity, and the air around the TSAD shimmered like heat distortion. I placed a simple metal sphere on the scanning platform. Nothing fancy, just a test object we'd used hundreds of times before. The holographic display exploded with data. The sphere appeared not as a single object, but as a four-dimensional ribbon of existence, showing where it had been manufactured, how it had been transported, where it sat now, and the probabilistic trajectories of where it might go next. The mathematics were gorgeous. The visualization was stunning. The audience sat in absolute silence for approximately 10 seconds. Then the applause started. Real applause, the kind that comes from genuine amazement rather than professional courtesy. I felt Velma's hand grip my shoulder, both of us trying not to cry from sheer relief and exhaustion and vindication. We'd done it. We'd actually done it. Excuse me, a voice called from the third row. The human voice. Owen Fletcher stood up, still holding his coffee cup like it was a natural extension of his arm. That's really impressive. Seriously, congratulations. But, do you think I could take a closer look at the device? Just for a minute. The temperature in the auditorium seemed to drop by several degrees. The TSAD is an extremely delicate instrument, I said carefully, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. Perhaps after the presentation we could arrange a supervised— Oh, sure, Owen said, already walking toward the stage with the casual confidence of someone who'd never met a boundary they couldn't cheerfully ignore. I'll be super careful. I just want to check out the interface architecture. Won't take long at all. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to say no, but we were at an open scientific summit. Collaborative inquiry was literally the entire point, and refusing a delegate access to publicly presented research would be, well, really bad form. I suppose a brief examination would be acceptable, I heard myself say, sealing my own fate. Owen Fletcher smiled. It was not a reassuring smile. Awesome, he said, setting his coffee cup down on my 43 years of work. I should have tackled him right there. Owen Fletcher approached the TSAD the way someone might approach a vending machine. Casually. Like it was just another piece of equipment that existed solely for his convenience. He walked around it once, hands clasped behind his back, making little humming noises that probably meant something in human body language but translated to me as vaguely ominous. Fascinating, he said, which was the least committal scientific assessment I'd ever heard. So these crystalline matrices, they're doing the heavy lifting on the dimensional translation, right? Yes, I said slowly, watching him lean in to examine a particularly sensitive array of quantum sensors. Please don't touch that specific. And the temporal stabilizers are basically preventing causality violations by maintaining a fixed reference frame. Owen continued, completely ignoring my warning. His fingers hovered millimeters from a control surface that required 3 years of training to operate safely. Smart, Really smart, but why are you using discrete quantum processors instead of a distributed neural network? Velna and I exchanged glances. That was actually a good question. An uncomfortably good question. The computational requirements exceed current neural network capacity, Velna answered, her tone taking on the defensive quality of someone whose design choices were being questioned. We need absolute precision in the calculations. Neural networks introduce too much probabilistic variation. Huh, Owen said, which was somehow worse than if he'd argued. He pulled out a datapad from his jacket pocket, the kind of slim human device that looked almost primitive compared to standard galactic technology. Do you mind if I take a few notes? This is really cool stuff. I suppose that would be. He was already typing, his fingers moving across the screen with a kind of speed that suggested he wasn't taking notes so much as performing some kind of real-time analysis. His eyes flicked between the TS-8 and his device, and I saw something in his expression that made my secondary heart start beating faster. Recognition. Understanding. The look of someone who'd just figured something out. Quick question, Owen said, still typing. The energy consumption must be massive for maintaining four-dimensional coherence. What are you pulling? 15,000 standard units per scan cycle. 14,700, I corrected automatically, then immediately regretted it. Why was I feeding him information? Right. And the scan resolution, I'm guessing you're limited by the crystalline matrix refresh rate? Probably around 0.003 temporal units, 0.0028, Velna said, falling into the same trap I had. There was something about the way Owen asked questions, casual and conversational, that made you want to answer them before your brain caught up with your mouth. Owen nodded, making more notes. Makes sense. The energy to resolution ratio is probably your main bottleneck then. And the interface. Wow, this is complex. How many operators does it take to run a standard scan? 3 certified technicians at minimum, I said, my concern growing with every passing second. The calibration requirements alone necessitate multi-operator redundancy for error checking. Yeah, that tracks. Owen straightened up, still staring at his datapad. But theoretically, if you optimized the control architecture and automated the calibration sequences, you could probably get that down to a single operator, maybe even semi-autonomous operation with the right algorithms. The auditorium had gone very quiet. Other delegates were watching this exchange with varying degrees of interest and alarm. A Corthian scientist in the 5th row had activated what I recognized as a recording device specifically designed to capture technical discussions. The complexity is necessary, I said firmly, trying to reassert some kind of authority over my own invention. The TS-8 is not a consumer device. It's a precision scientific instrument that requires extensive training. Oh, absolutely, totally get that, Owen interrupted, finally looking up from his datapad. His expression was friendly, almost apologetic, which made everything worse. I'm not criticizing the design at all. You've built something incredible here. Genuinely revolutionary. I'm just thinking out loud about potential applications and, scalability. Scalability. The word hung in the air like a threat. The TS-8 is not designed to be scaled, Velna said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. It's a research tool for controlled laboratory environments and specialized field applications. The safety requirements alone prevent mass deployment. Sure, Owen agreed easily, making even more notes. In its current configuration, definitely. But the underlying principles, the core technology, that's what's really interesting. You've basically cracked four-dimensional perception. That's huge. That's like civilization changing huge. He said it like it was a good thing, like the implications didn't terrify him at all. I looked at Velna. She looked at me. We both had the same thought simultaneously, written across our faces in perfect clarity. We should have kept the humans out of this session. How much longer do you need to examine the device? I asked, trying to sound polite rather than desperate. Owen glanced at his datapad one more time, then smiled that unsettling smile again. Oh, I think I've got everything I need, he said. Thanks for being so patient with all my questions. This has been super educational. That should have been reassuring. It should have meant the danger had passed. Instead, it sounded exactly like the calm before a supernova. Owen Fletcher approached the TS-8 the way someone might approach a vending machine. Casually. Like it was just another piece of equipment that existed solely for his convenience. He walked around it once, hands clasped behind his back, making little humming noises that probably meant something in human body language but translated to me as vaguely ominous. Fascinating, he said, which was the least committal scientific assessment I'd ever heard. So these crystalline matrices, They're doing the heavy lifting on the dimensional translation, right? Yes, I said slowly, watching him lean in to examine a particularly sensitive array of quantum sensors. Please don't touch that specific, and the temporal stabilizers are basically preventing causality violations by maintaining a fixed reference frame. Owen continued, completely ignoring my warning. His fingers hovered millimeters from a control surface that required 3 years of training to operate safely. Smart. Really smart. But why are you using discrete quantum processors instead of a distributed neural network? Velma and I exchanged glances. That was actually a good question. An uncomfortably good question. The computational requirements exceed current neural network capacity, Velma answered, her tone taking on the defensive quality of someone whose design choices were being questioned. We need absolute precision in the calculations. Neural networks introduce too much probabilistic variation. Owen said, which was somehow worse than if he'd argued. He pulled out a datapad from his jacket pocket, the kind of slim human device that looked almost primitive compared to standard galactic technology. Do you mind if I take a few notes? This is really cool stuff. I suppose that would be. He was already typing, his fingers moving across the screen with the kind of speed that suggested he wasn't taking notes so much as performing some kind of real-time analysis. His eyes flicked between the TSA and his device, and I saw something in his expression that made my secondary heart start beating faster. Recognition. Understanding. The look of someone who just figured something out. Quick question, Owen said, still typing. The energy consumption must be massive for maintaining four-dimensional coherence. What are you pulling? 15,000 standard units per scan cycle. 14,700, I corrected automatically, then immediately regretted it. Why was I feeding him information? Right. And the scan resolution, I'm guessing you're limited by the crystalline matrix refresh rate. Probably around 0.003 temporal units, 0.0028, Velma said, falling into the same trap I had. There was something about the way Owen asked questions, casual and conversational, that made you want to answer them before your brain caught up with your mouth. Owen nodded, making more notes. Makes sense. The energy-to-resolution ratio is probably your main bottleneck then. And the interface. Wow, this is complex. How many operators does it take to run a standard scan? 3 certified technicians at minimum, I said, my concern growing with every passing second. The calibration requirements alone necessitate multi-operator redundancy for error checking. Yeah, that tracks. Owen straightened up, still staring at his datapad. But theoretically, if you optimized the control architecture and automated the calibration sequences, you could probably get that down to a single operator, maybe even semi-autonomous operation with the right algorithms. The auditorium had gone very quiet. Other delegates were watching this exchange with varying degrees of interest and alarm. A Corthian scientist in the 5th row had activated what I recognized as a recording device specifically designed to capture technical discussions. The complexity is necessary, I said firmly, trying to reassert some kind of authority over my own invention. The TSA is not a consumer device. It's a precision scientific instrument that requires extensive training. Oh, absolutely. Totally get that. Owen interrupted, finally looking up from his datapad. His expression was friendly, almost apologetic, which made everything worse. I'm not criticizing the design at all. You've built something incredible here, genuinely revolutionary. I'm just thinking out loud about potential applications and, scalability. Scalability. The word hung in the air like a threat. The TSAD is not designed to be scaled, Velma said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. It's a research tool for controlled laboratory environments and specialized field applications. The safety requirements alone prevent mass deployment. Sure, Owen agreed easily, making even more notes. In its current configuration, definitely, but the underlying principles, the core technology, that's what's really interesting. You've basically cracked four-dimensional perception. That's huge. That's like civilization-changing huge. He said it like it was a good thing. Like the implications didn't terrify him at all. I looked at Velna. She looked at me. We both had the same thought simultaneously, written across our faces in perfect clarity. We should have kept the humans out of this session. How much longer do you need to examine the device? I asked, trying to sound polite rather than desperate. Owen glanced at his datapad one more time, then smiled that unsettling smile again. Oh, I think I've got everything I need, he said. Thanks for being so patient with all my questions. This has been super educational. That should have been reassuring. It should have meant the danger had passed. Instead, it sounded exactly like the calm before a supernova. The lunch break was supposed to be a chance to recover, to process what had just happened, to maybe have a quiet panic attack in a bathroom somewhere while Velna handled the increasingly excited questions from other delegates. Instead, I spent it watching my life's work get uploaded to something called the Galactic App Marketplace. "What are you doing?" I asked Owen, who had commandeered a corner table in the cafeteria and was typing furiously on his datapad while somehow also eating a sandwich. Humans and their multitasking abilities were genuinely unsettling. "Publishing," Owen said through a mouthful of what smelled like processed protein and vegetables. "The modifications I made to your interface. They're really good. Seems selfish to keep them locked up in an academic setting when people could actually use them." "Use them for what exactly?" Velna demanded, appearing beside me with a tray of nutritional supplements she clearly had no intention of consuming. "The TSAD is a scientific research tool, not a consumer product." "Well, not the full TSAD, obviously," Owen said, swallowing. "That would require actual hardware that most people don't have. But the interface principles, the simplified four-dimensional visualization algorithms, those are software. And software wants to be free, or at least reasonably priced. I'm thinking maybe 15 credits for the basic version, 30 for premium features." He turned his datapad around to show us. There, on the screen, was an application listing complete with a logo, description and screenshots. 4D Snap, I read aloud, my voice hollow. "Turn any compatible scanner into a four-dimensional imaging device. Take photos that show past, present and future. See the world like never before." "Catchy, right?" Owen said proudly. "I worked with a marketing AI to optimize the description. The key demographic is going to be younger users who want creative photography options, but there's definitely potential for professional applications too. Architects, archaeologists, that kind of thing." "You cannot be serious," Velna said, but her voice lacked conviction. She'd clearly moved past shock into some kind of resigned acceptance that this was actually happening. Owen tapped the screen. "Unpublished. Should propagate through the network in the next few minutes. I set up some automated social media posts too, just to get initial visibility." "Automated social media posts," I repeated numbly. "Yeah, hitting the major platforms. Human ones mostly, since that's where the early adopters will be. But I tagged it for cross-species compatibility, so we'll see." He went back to eating his sandwich like he hadn't just weaponized 4 decades of careful scientific research. I pulled out my own datapad with shaking hands and accessed the human sections of the galactic network. I'd learned to monitor these after previous incidents involving humans and technology they probably shouldn't have had access to. Call it professional paranoia. The posts were already spreading. "Holy crap, someone made 4D photography accessible," read one message. Shared 14,000 times in the 3 minutes since Owen had posted it. "Downloading 4D Snap now, this is going to change everything," claimed another. "Finally, a decent four-dimensional visualization tool that doesn't cost a research grant," said a third. The download counter on the app listing was climbing. Fast. Faster than should have been physically possible given network propagation speeds. 10,000 downloads. 20,000. 50,000. "This has to be a mistake," I said weakly. "The application requires compatible hardware. Most personal devices can't support four-dimensional processing." "About that," Owen said. "I optimized it to work with pretty much any scanner that has basic quantum processing capability, which is, most of them these days. The resolution won't be as good as a dedicated TSAD, obviously, but it's functional. Good enough for casual use." 100,000 downloads. Then the photos started appearing. A human teenager had taken what she called a 4D selfie, showing herself at 3 different temporal coordinates simultaneously, making different expressions in each. The caption read, "Me past, present and future all being done with today." Another user had scanned their cat, producing an image that showed the animal's entire trajectory through their living space over the course of an hour, rendered as a beautiful 4-dimensional ribbon of feline chaos. Someone else had used it to photograph a flower, capturing its bloom cycle across multiple temporal frames in a single image that was, I had to admit with extreme reluctance, actually quite stunning. "This is a disaster," Velna said, scrolling through her own feed. "They're using it for entertainment, for art projects, for social media posts." "Is that bad?" Owen asked, genuinely seeming confused by our distress. "I mean, art and entertainment are valid applications of technology. Science doesn't have to be locked up in laboratories to be valuable." 500,000 downloads. A notification popped up on my screen. Someone had created a tutorial video titled 4D Snap for Absolute Beginners, Everything You Need to Know in 5 Minutes. It had already been viewed 2 million times. We spent 43 years, I said quietly, watching the numbers climb. 43 years of research, peer review, careful documentation, safety protocols, and in less than an hour it's become a toy. Not a toy, Owen corrected. A tool. An accessible tool. There's a difference. 1 million downloads. A Corthian scientist posted a message. Just used 4D Snap to analyze archaeological samples. Results comparable to laboratory equipment at a fraction of the cost. Incredible work. A human astronomer shared temporal scans of a nearby nebula with the caption, "I can see the light evolution patterns now. This changes observational astrophysics." And then, inevitably, someone used it to create what they called 4D meme art, showing a comedic scene playing out across multiple temporal coordinates with caption overlays. "It's going viral," Velna said, her voice taking on a distant quality. "Actually genuinely viral. This might be the fastest technology adoption rate in recorded galactic history. 2 million downloads." Owen finished his sandwich and pulled up what appeared to be analytics data. Engagement metrics are looking really solid. Lots of organic sharing. Minimal bounce rate. I think we might need to upgrade the server capacity soon. Didn't expect this much traffic this quickly. "We?" I shouted, loud enough that several nearby delegates turned to stare. "There is no we in this equation. You hijacked our research and turned it into an accessible consumer application with significant scientific and artistic utility." Owen suggested helpfully. 3 million downloads. I watched the counter climb, watched the posts multiply, watched decades of careful scientific work get absorbed into human popular culture like it had always belonged there. "I need to sit down," I said. "You're already sitting," Velna pointed out. "Then I need to sit more intensely." Owen's datapad chimed. He glanced at it and grinned. "Oh cool. A major news network wants to interview me about 4D Snap. Should I mention you guys? Give credit to the original research?" "Please don't," Velna and I said simultaneously. 4 million downloads and climbing. The lunch break still had 20 minutes left. I had a feeling those were going to be a very long 20 minutes. The emergency session was called exactly 47 minutes after Owen published his application. That might have been a record for bureaucratic response time, which tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the Galactic Council was taking this situation. The council chamber on Verdos Prime was significantly less welcoming than the summit auditorium. Harsh lighting, uncomfortable seating designed for judicial proceedings rather than comfort, and a semicircular arrangement of council members who looked like they were deciding whether to award a medal or authorize an execution. Probably the execution, based on their expressions. Owen sat in the defendant's chair, or what would have been the defendant's chair in an actual trial, looking completely unbothered. He'd even brought his coffee. "Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly," said Council Arbiter Threnix, a Veldorian whose species was known for their patience and measured judgment. The fact that she currently looked ready to throw someone out an airlock suggested we'd exceeded her tolerance threshold. "In less than 2 hours you have taken a highly specialized scientific instrument, reverse-engineered its control systems, simplified its interface, and distributed it to approximately 7.3 million users across 42 different species. 7.4 million now," Owen corrected helpfully, checking his datapad. "The numbers are really accelerating. I think we hit a critical mass on the human networks, and now it's spreading to other species through cultural exchange channels." Threnix's face did something complicated. "And you see nothing problematic about this sequence of events?" "Well, problematic is a strong word," Owen said thoughtfully. "I mean, yes. I probably should have asked permission before modifying Dr. Kelrith's equipment. That was rude, and I apologize. But the distribution of the application, that's just making useful technology accessible. Isn't that what scientific progress is supposed to be about?" I sat in the witness section next to Velna, both of us watching this diplomatic catastrophe unfold with morbid fascination. Around us, other delegates whispered to each other, translators working overtime to keep up with the multilingual chaos. "Scientific progress," Threnix said slowly, "is supposed to involve peer review, safety testing, ethical oversight, and institutional accountability, none of which appear to have factored into your decision-making process." "I mean, the underlying technology was already peer-reviewed," Owen pointed out. "Dr. Kelrith and his team did excellent work validating the core principles. I just optimized the delivery mechanism, and as for safety testing, I've been monitoring user reports for the past hour. No incidents. No injuries. No temporal anomalies. Everything's working as intended. Teenagers are taking selfies with four-dimensional imaging. A Corthian counselor bellowed, their translated voice dripping with outrage. This technology was meant for archaeological research and particle physics, not social media entertainment. Why can't it be both? Owen asked, and I could see several council members visibly struggle with that question. Another counselor, a Threxian named Vexeler, leaned forward. This is part of a pattern with your species, Mr. Fletcher. Every time humans encounter advanced technology, you immediately find ways to commercialize it, simplify it, and distribute it to your general population without regard for the original intent or potential consequences. That's not entirely fair, Owen started, but Vexeler cut him off. When the Etherians shared their quantum entanglement communication protocols, specifically designed for deep space diplomatic channels, what did humans do? Created an instant messaging application that teenagers use to share images of their meals. QChat is actually really useful, Owen muttered. When the Drexnari provided advanced medical nanites for treating catastrophic cellular damage in emergency situations, humans adapted them into cosmetic enhancement products available at retail outlets. Those still have medical applications, Owen protested weakly. And when the Valdorians offered gravitational manipulation technology for precision cargo transport in space, humans turned it into recreational sporting equipment and entertainment park attractions. Owen opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't really argue with that one. Vexeler continued, clearly on a roll. Your species has a documented history of taking carefully controlled, highly specialized technology and immediately asking, but what if everyone could do this all the time for any reason? It's reckless. It's destabilizing, and frankly, it's becoming a significant diplomatic problem. Okay, yes, Owen admitted, setting down his coffee cup. Humans do have a tendency to democratize technology. We see something restricted to specialists or institutions, and we think why? Why can't regular people have access to this? Why should useful tools be locked behind credentials and institutional access? Because not everything needs to be accessible to everyone, Threnix said firmly. Some technology requires training, oversight and ethical frameworks that casual users cannot or will not maintain. But that's the thing, Owen said, his tone becoming more serious. Your frameworks aren't actually about safety most of the time. They're about control, about maintaining hierarchies. Dr. Kelrith's scanner, brilliant work, genuinely revolutionary, but in its original form, maybe a few hundred scientists across the galaxy would ever get to use it. Research institutions with proper funding, academic environments with the right credentials. Everyone else just has to trust that those select few will use it responsibly on their behalf. He gestured to his datapad. But now, artists are using it to create new forms of expression. Students are using it for educational projects. Small research teams who couldn't afford dedicated equipment are making real discoveries. Yeah, some people are using it for silly selfies, but so what? The silly applications don't diminish the serious ones. The silly applications create cultural normalization of advanced technology that could have unforeseen consequences. Vexeler argued. Every technology has unforeseen consequences, Owen countered. Fire probably had unforeseen consequences when somebody first figured it out. Writing definitely did. The printing press, computers, genetic engineering, all of you can either try to control the chaos, which never works, or you can embrace it and deal with problems as they emerge. The council chamber fell silent. I could see the councilors exchanging glances, having silent conversations that probably involved phrases like typical human arrogance and how do we contain this. Finally Threnix spoke. What you've done may not be technically illegal, Mr. Fletcher, but it represents a fundamental violation of scientific ethics and collaborative trust. Does it though? Owen asked quietly. Or does it represent a different philosophy about who gets to benefit from scientific advancement? More silence. Uncomfortable, heavy silence. A notification chimed, then another, then dozens simultaneously across the chamber as delegates checked their devices. 10 million downloads. Threnix looked at her own display, then at Owen, then at me. Dr. Kelrith, she said. You're the injured party in this situation. What outcome would you consider appropriate? Everyone turned to look at me. Vilna squeezed my arm encouragingly. I thought about 43 years of work, about careful research and peer review, about safety protocols and institutional oversight, about the way science was supposed to progress, slowly and carefully and correctly. Then I thought about 7.4 million, no 10 million people using four-dimensional imaging technology, Creating things, learning things, discovering things I'd never anticipated. I think, I said slowly, that I need time to process this before I can answer that question rationally. It was the most diplomatic way I could think of to say I have no idea what to do about any of this, and I'm pretty sure reality broke somewhere around the lunch break. Thrinix nodded sympathetically. Understandable. This session is adjourned pending further deliberation. As the council members filed out, Owen turned to me. For what it's worth, he said, your research really is brilliant. I couldn't have done any of this without your foundation. That doesn't make me feel better, I told him. Yeah, Owen said. I didn't think it would. 3 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a cafe on Vardos Prime, watching humans take 4-dimensional selfies with my technology while I drank something that was allegedly coffee but tasted like regret. The Galactic Council had ultimately decided to do nothing. What could they do, really? The application was already distributed across 47 species and counting. Trying to suppress it would have been like trying to unring a bell, except the bell was currently ringing on 10 million devices simultaneously and showing no signs of stopping. Velna had taken a consulting position with a research institute that wanted to explore accessible applications of advanced dimensional physics. She seemed happy, or at least less devastated than I'd expected. Apparently getting paid extremely well to advise on technology democratization helped ease the sting of having your life's work turned into a consumer product. I was still processing. My datapad chimed. A message from Owen Fletcher, because apparently we were in contact now. Regular contact. He sent me updates about the application like we were colleagues. Like we were friends. Hey Dr. K. The message read, and I winced at the nickname he'd unilaterally decided to assign me. The latest analytics are wild. 4D Snap just hit 50 million downloads. Also, 3 universities have published papers using data collected through the app. Told you it had serious research applications. Want to grab lunch and talk about potential version 2.0. He was already planning improvements. I should have ignored the message. Should have maintained professional distance from the human who'd fundamentally disrupted my career trajectory and probably violated several dozen scientific ethics guidelines in the process. Instead, I found myself typing, "What kind of features?" The reply came within seconds. Lots of ideas. Better temporal resolution. Multi-user collaborative scanning. Maybe AR integration so you can see 4D overlays in real time. Also been thinking about applications for medical diagnostics and material science. Could be really useful. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I looked around the cafe at humans casually using 4-dimensional imaging technology to photograph their beverages, their companions, the architecture around them. Using it like it was normal. Like perceiving 4 dimensions was just another Tuesday afternoon activity. And the thing was, they were using it well. I'd spent the past 3 weeks reviewing the data Owen had shared with me, looking at what people were actually doing with the technology. Yes, there were silly applications, plenty of silly applications, but there were also artists creating genuinely innovative works, researchers making legitimate discoveries, teachers using it as an educational tool to help students understand complex physics concepts. The technology hadn't been diminished by accessibility. If anything, it had been enhanced by the sheer volume and diversity of applications people had found for it. That realization didn't make me less annoyed, but it did make me less certain I'd been entirely right about everything. My datapad chimed again. Another message from Owen. Also, I should probably mention that I've been working on modifications to Eutherian phase shift generators. Nothing major, just some efficiency improvements. Thought you might want to know since you're on the advisory board for exotic physics applications. We should probably coordinate before I publish anything. Before, he said before, not if. Like publication was inevitable and coordination was just a courtesy he was extending out of politeness. I laughed. Actually laughed. Right there in the cafe. Loud enough that several humans turned to look at me with concern. This was my life now. Watching humans take advanced scientific principles and immediately figuring out how to turn them into applications that anyone could use. Fighting them was pointless. They were going to do it anyway. With or without permission, with or without oversight, with or without any regard for how things were supposed to work. I typed back, lunch sounds acceptable, but I'm choosing the restaurant, and you're not allowed to reverse engineer anything while we eat. Deal, Owen responded. See you Thursday. And hey, thanks for being cool about all this. I know it wasn't what you expected, but I think we make a pretty good team. We were apparently a team now. I finished my terrible coffee and stood up, shouldering my bag. A human teenager walked past. holding up her device to take a four-dimensional scan of her friend group, all of them laughing as they manipulated the temporal coordinates to create an impossible group photo. They were having fun with 43 years of my research. Having fun and learning and creating and exploring. Maybe that wasn't the worst outcome after all. Maybe, and I was only maybe admitting this, the humans had a point about accessibility and democratization and letting technology evolve in unexpected directions. But I was absolutely not going to tell Owen Fletcher that. His ego was already insufficiently contained. My datapad chimed one more time. A notification from the Galactic App Marketplace. 4D Snap has been updated with new features including improved resolution and collaborative scanning modes. Update now. Of course he'd already released an update. Of course he had. I tapped the update button and watched the progress bar fill. Somewhere in the galaxy. Probably multiple somewheres. Owen Fletcher was already working on his next project. Already figuring out what other carefully controlled scientific instrument he could turn into something anyone with a datapad could use, and somewhere else probably in a council chamber or research institution or ethics committee meeting. Aliens were having furious debates about human approaches to technology and whether anything could be done to slow them down. The answer I'd learned was no. Nothing could slow humans down when they decided technology should be accessible. You could either work with them or get out of the way. I'd chosen to work with them. Apparently, may whatever deities are listening have mercy on us all. But first, I needed better coffee. The kind that didn't taste like existential crisis. Even revolutionary technological disruption couldn't happen on an empty stomach.